Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of We Table It. And thank you so much for joining us. As you know, We Table It is here to dissect society and inspire change. And we are very excited for the talk that we want to share with you today. And I would look forward to any inputs, questions, comments, because this is one of those that you want to be active and participate with us in. So today we're going to have the full panel, myself, host of We Table It, Valerie Siganga, my co-host, Eno Vwaire, and our other co-host, Dr. Osaro Aigbogun. We'll all be here and we will be sharing our opinions on this exciting topic. So before we get started, some things for you to do. First, if you have not liked or subscribed to our pages, please like and subscribe because you don't want to miss out on the talks that we'll be having in the future. And there's also a lot of topics that you can find on our YouTube page and on Facebook of previous talks so that you can sort of get into the vibe of what it is that we're sharing. During the talk, you can share your questions, your comments, your suggestions, your opinions, anything that you'd like to share, you can share it with us in the comment section, and we will be able to respond to you. And just so that you know, you will find us across all platforms. So we are active on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok. Look for us and you will find us, and that's at We Table It. And so today, let us get started on what we want to talk about. Our topic of the day is no more business as usual, And today we want to talk about how do we hold politicians accountable for violence and stunts. And this is one topic I think that touches on people from across the world. Every country that you go to, no matter where you are, will have a politician of some sort, somebody in politics who is in place to deliver a promise, who has made it their business to let you know how it is they're going to perform their duties to make your life easier, and who is accountable to you as a citizen of that country on what it is that they're supposed to be achieving. And so today we really want to talk about why it's important for politicians to be accountable to the people, and also why it's important for them to be accountable in case violence or political stunts arrive where they try to manipulate narratives or change the way people are thinking. So that is what we're going to be touching on today. And why is this a topic that we thought we should bring up? First of all, we're looking at what's happening in the world around us. I am in Kenya. Eno, you're in Nigeria. Osaro is in Malaysia, also living in the US. And we're all experiencing different, let me say, flavors of politics. So we want to look at each of these flavors and see what they have in common and where we can hold people accountable. And so without further ado, I'm going to invite Eno to kick us off and let us know a little bit about how we can understand this issue, about politicians and political violence and political stance.
Hi, Valerie. Thank you for ushering the topic in. Everybody, you're welcome to this live. We're excited to be here today. The topic is one that is actually timely, given the fact that we are having, from my own end, something that is sizzling coming up. There's a protest going to be on from the 1st of next month. And it's because of the grievances that the masses hold against governance. And yes, we're talking about political violence and their impact on the society. Yes, we are going to be looking at this. We've had cases, the focus here is on Africa. I beg your pardon, because we can relate. So even when you are watching, if you have any contribution, please do not hesitate to just, jump in the comment section and just give us your views on the topic. All right, so I know most of us are familiar with the incidents that have happened in Africa in the time past, the ones that are notable, and even in the current, you know, time, we've been having some, one or two issues with political unrest. We've had political violence in Africa that we will never forget. The Rwandan genocide of 1994. We've had the Kenyan post-election violence, 2007, I think, to 2008. We've had the Nigerian civil war, that from 1967 to 1970, it was something that was quite remarkable in these regions of Africa. When the people are saying want and the government is, trying to impose what they think is right, definitely the violence comes up. There is unrest. It affects the economy. It affects a lot of things. The system generally is being affected by this violence. So this is what we are looking at today. We'll be treating some different topics and different areas. For now, we'll look at historical perspective. I said before, the political violence in Africa, Rwandan genocide. I don't know if we have people viewing us right now who can really tell us, we remember the Hutus and the Tutsis having issues. Valerie, can you really, I know Rwanda is quite close to you guys in Kenya. Can you really remind us what happened in that 1994 genocide? Because we, even as kids, I remember that we saw a lot of, images on the TV of, the situation in Rwanda. We do not pray that we have these situations anywhere in Africa ever again. We don't want to see these kind of situations anywhere in Africa ever again. This is why we are having to rise up to speak about it. We do not want our voices to be silenced. We want the government of our countries in Africa to understand, to be able to hear our heartbeats and to work in line with what we demand of them and not what they think is right for us. Because all in all, what we want to see in Africa is development. Now, can you share with us? I remember the Tutsi and the Hutus are ethnic groups in Rwanda. I think one is the majority and the other was feeling kind of marginalized, and then violence ensued. And some people would say it was politically masterminded. Whatever it is, please can you share your views on that, what you perceived from the situation of the 1990 genocide?
Wow, Eno, thank you for that question. And what's interesting is the genocide took place when I was a child, but it's something that we heard about. One of the things that I don't have a lot of details on is how it started. And I know it was the two tribes. I don't know which was the stronger one, which was the weaker one. But what I do remember from the news and from listening to family members about what was happening in Rwanda was the death and the death of families. What was happening with the genocide is families were being killed as the entire family, mother, father, children. Some were lucky where they had
Yeah.
one survivor or two survivors. People who, had lost their whole family sort of had to come together and then support each other. There was also a high amount of gender-based violence in the form of rape, particularly to women. And so what I remember about that time, it was a very awful, difficult time for the country. Now, you make me want to go dig into my history books because I'm not sure how it came to an end. But we know because the country is there and it's growing and thriving today that it did. But what cannot be discounted is the impact that it had on them. And I think even the generation that are there now, people who are possibly in their 30s, from that time, their 40s, are really sort of survivors and bringers of a new age into their own country. Yes, so that's something that I'd need to look at and see from the political angle what happened that it got to that stage. Mm.
All right. So, based on my own understanding of the situation, and from what a lot of people have spoken that I have listened to, it is quite obvious that situations like what happened in Rwanda is a situation. It's something that's politically masterminded, where the ones in power use this kind of mechanism of division. When you divide them, you can be able to control them, and when these things happen, even in Nigeria, we see such cases where they play the tribal card, and those are the grassroots. They begin to just work in favor of one political person or one, just like that. And they wouldn't know that they are just like pawns.
Mm.
Somebody can just be somewhere in a distance, even from another country, trying to instigate violence. And people, especially the youths, are being used for this kind of, to perpetrate violence of this kind. However, the impact of that genocide is still felt years and decades after that situation. So we are looking at this because we don't want to have a repetition of it. We don't want to have a repetition of it. And the Kenyan post-election violence, 2007 to 2008.
Oh,
I just want to hear a bit about that before we just continue.
oh, and no, that's what I was in there. I was here. I lived through the
Okay.
2007 experience. I was an adult, a young adult, and I remember it clearly. And it's so true what you said, especially in Africa, how they try to divide people along tribal lines. Because at that time the division was really along tribal lines, and it was very dangerous because now as we've moved into future time and future spaces, people intermarry. So you're not necessarily with somebody from your tribe, but it'll be another Kenyan, and families were separating because if your wife or your husband is from a tribe that is not accepted where you live, you know that there's a possibility people will come. And if the person is from the wrong tribe, there's a possibility of injury, a possibility of murder. It was a
Yeah.
terrifying.
There, yeah.
Was the name of the game, in terms of groups of people going into areas looking for people of a particular tribe and killing them. There were also assassinations on different people, some in the political class
Oh my.
as well, who are not, I suppose, playing ball, as now we can see that's what happens with politics. And as just the general population, we were scared. We did not have access to food, roads were closed. I remember at the time I was working in a food outlet for fast food, and it got to the point there was no, all the channels for delivery were closed, so we couldn't get fresh materials. People were panic buying. If you come to buy a toothbrush, you're not going to eat it, but you'll buy like 10 because you don't know when toothbrushes will be available again. It was just a time of panic and of a real sense of how fragile your life could be if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Politically, one of the most gruesome and worst things that happened was a church where people go to seek refuge, full of people, women, children, worshippers. People were burnt alive, killed in that church because of being from a particular community. And all this was for political, I suppose, gain, political leverage. It should not have happened, but it did. And so those are some of the violence and stunts that politics sort of brings to light. And what did that achieve? Because one of the things that you talked about was first being able to separate people. As you said, when people unite, they have to be separated. The politics can only work when people are fighting each other, you know? So once people come together, the
Yeah.
first thing is
Fighting each other. Yeah.
find a way, let's separate them. So tribalism has been the easiest way in Africa to really separate people according to their tribal lines. But it also brought in a sense of a lot of fear. so that when you see somebody from a certain community, you can be friends, but not so much, just in case, So that fear was brought about. And I just have a few points I want to add on because it really ties into what I wanted to touch on in terms of what's happening in Kenya today. Um, Today in Kenya, our politicians, when we started off our protests at the beginning of June, we were protesting a tax bill or finance bill that was going to be very oppressive to the people of Kenya. And one thing that was not expected, even me as a Kenyan, I did not expect, but it happened, is that despite different tribal lines, people came together, right? And it stopped being about a tribe and it started being about people speaking in one voice and saying what it is that they want or don't. And there was so much unity. And that unity genuinely, I think, terrified the people in political, what we now call the political class. And so the first thing that they had to do was figure out how do we break up this unity because tribal lines here is not working. The usual is not working. This is a
Yeah.
different type of matter. And so what they did is bring in disunity to the unity, cause confusion. And before you know it, people were almost starting to fight each other away from the main cause. Now we start pointing fingers amongst the core group of people who are protesting. And the finger pointing goes, oh, you are with the government. No, you are with the government. Initially, we were all together. So politicians are fantastic at creating disunity when they're faced with the situation of unity of people. And that's the first tool. It used to be tribalism, now they have to find other things, and they're finding them in
Wow.
order to disunity. Mm.
Yeah. So there is no. Yeah.
Sorry, just repeat. You broke up for a moment.
Yeah, that's why I had to pause. I'm experiencing some network glitch here. I beg your pardon.
No problem.
While you were speaking, just wanted to throw more light on the impact of this situation on our society. There is
Mm,
no gain at all in political violence, either for the governance or for the masses. This is one
mm,
thing I want us to understand, even while we look further into the topic. There is actually no gain. There is always losses associated with this sort of violence, whether it streams from the divide and rule, these tribal issues that those that are power thirsty want to use. I mean, I think that's one of the tools they use, to get what they want to get done is a divide and rule. That's certain. That's one thing they do. It is still very effective. Even today, we have that in Nigeria, where there is really tribal. I don't know the word I want to use for that. These people are Igbos. These people are Yorubas. These people are Hausas. They don't see eye to eye, and this is
mm,
where the problem comes from. Like you rightly pointed out, there is strength in unity. When we speak with one voice, there is no limit to what we can achieve as a people. And the enemy sees that and want to use that against us. So now back to what we were saying about the impact. There are no gains anywhere. It's all losses. We can see that has happened to economies like Zimbabwe, when Robert Mugabe, his regime used a lot of violence and intimidation against political opponents. What happened? Economic collapse. All right.
mm.
Democratic Republic of Congo, the use of armed groups to maintain political power. What happens? A lot of humanitarian crisis, displacement of people,
Yes.
the continuous conflict. Nobody wants to invest in places where there are continuous conflict, and that is so. That's that for impact. Will still throw more light, so we can go ahead with the next part of the conversation. Thank you, Valerie.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eno. And even as we jump into the next thing, there's something that you've mentioned, which I think we can also touch on a little bit, and that
All right.
is how um, the actions, political actions, and the violence and different stunts that politicians use affect the ability of people to invest, right? And so,
Yeah.
one of the things that you mentioned, Kenya is a powerhouse in East Africa, Nigeria is a powerhouse in West Africa. What impact have you seen of, investments when we have political issues and political wrangles? Are people leaving? Here in Kenya, we're seeing investors leaving. We've
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
big
yeah.
companies.
In Nigeria, the situation is the same. Just
Yes.
about a month or so ago, we had Microsoft, a technology company, leaving Nigeria. Yeah. So
Mm,
we've had other sectors of, other industries leaving too. The automobile, we've had, I think Volkswagen was in Nigeria, they've left. We're even having, there are news here and there. We had ShopRite, that's even an African brand, leaving Nigeria. We have lots of, cases like that. Investors are leaving. People are not wanting to invest in the country because of the unrest. And this is the situation we are in now in Nigeria. People are scared of doing business. We discussed the last time about the jackpot thing. People leaving the countries, they're leaving Africa, going to other places where they can have security. That's an issue. One of the issues where, the factors that's influencing the living of these companies and the lack of investors in our countries in Africa. Security is one problem, and that streams from political violence we're talking about today.
yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, definitely people getting up and going, and it's affecting us in Africa because these were industries that were sort of being built up, jobs are lost. And as Africans, I think there's so much room for us to learn to recreate and reinvent these jobs, make sure that they come back, you know? Yes, so now I'll just jump into
Mm.
what we're going to talk about next. And this is coming to the citizens. As citizens, now what do we do? When we're dealing with politicians, we are living in a time of political violence, murder, shootings, manipulation, lies. Oh my goodness, lies. We are being lied to, promises that are not being kept, infighting.
Yeah.
As when we look at ourselves as the citizens, as people, how do we then organize ourselves in our millions and organize our voice? And I think what we've seen happening in Kenya is the protests that we're doing. That's how we've been organizing ourselves and having our voices heard. There have been some changes that have come through the protests. There's been a lot of opposition of the protests and people, giving them names and trying to water them down and make it sound like it is just. But the reality is, it's one thing being able to, but we need to be able to do. So, yeah, welcome, Osaro. Anytime you want to jump in, yeah, in terms of what can we do and how can we use our voices as
All right. Yeah. I mean, good to be here after quite a long time. Still trying to do a number of adjustments with my timing. Yeah. Good to see you, Valerie and Enor, looking beautiful as usual. And I love our topic, and I think it's not a topic we can entirely exhaust in, I mean, within 1 hour. Looking at what is happening in Kenya, and there are news. I mean, there's a lot of information out there in the news that similar thing might replicate itself in Nigeria. And Nigeria with its huge population and diversity, when things like this come up, it's gonna be more than it's gonna be more than we can imagine. We pray against that, but you know what? The truth is this: which comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Mm,
After putting 1 plus 1, what do we get?
Two.
We definitely will have a 2. So when people keep talking about a protest not happening, they are running away from reality. You can push the people to the wall. When they get to the wall, they want to actually go through the wall, but they cannot. They'll have to bounce back. It is
Mm,
a normal thing that happens. History tells us that a hungry man is an angry man. The best way to fight crime is
That's
not to
true.
put up a number of police out there. Fight hunger. That's the enemy. That's the common enemy. And people
mm,
will find it easier not to go into crime. You know, we talk. I stumbled upon you talking about politics. We cannot entirely dissociate political power from um, from the discussion today. And
mm,
I would like to say that, and I mean, I don't want to be biased, but I would like to say that many of our conversations relate to the current realities in Africa. Sadly, it has always been there, and we're not having this because we want it to continue. We're having this because we want to contribute to the stoppage, right? To mitigate it. So now the thing is, power is something that makes people go crazy. It's the opium for the political masses. Uh, should I call them political elite or
mm,
diselite? I wish there's a word to use. I mean, elite would probably be making it fashionable and exciting to go in there and do rubbish like we see. However, let's look at the theoretical basis, like I like to go through before I get to hit the nail on the head. So power, we can look at power in terms of the sources of the power. We've got legitimate power, which is a type of power that is inherent to the position you're occupying. And this is what is attracting a lot of people into positions. They want that power. And
mm,
the position immediately grants them that power. And they use it whatever way they can. But because they are occupying that position, they've got the power, and there's nothing we can do about it. On the flip side, there's another source of power, and that's the reference power. The reference
mm,
power is the power gotten from people's admiration. People like you, the kind of relationship you build with people, although it may be painstaking, it may take time, but it is the best form of power because it is more long lasting and it's not entirely tied to the position you occupy.
mm,
Many of these people who we've got problem with, they want power and they do everything to look for legitimate power. However
mm,
it sounds, they do everything to get to that power position and occupy that position, and they don't want to leave that position because if they leave that position, the power is lost. That's the
mm,
problem with legitimate power. They become
mm,
clueless and leave. And yet, many of them are so stupid that they do not want to build the reference type of power, the type of power where you do not need a lot of security details. People
mm,
give you the power, and people expect you to keep the power because of the relationship you built with them. And now, because the entire theme that surrounds power is influence, you
mm,
already have influence on people that can cause them to do almost nothing, almost everything uh, that you want them to do. So sorry, there are a couple of people all around me
mm.
here. Okay, but all right. So just hold on, okay. All
That's
right.
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, as I was saying, the solution for long-lasting power is for these people, leaders. Of course, we know power is an essential tool for leaders, right? To leverage on reference power, let the people put you there, and for them to put you there, let them fall in love, in resonance with what you have for them, slowly build this up, get their confidence, even when things seem to be going south, when things seem to be going wrong. It is because of that trust, that admiration, and like they have for you. They will not go out there on the streets because they believe in your vision. They do
Mm,
not believe in that legitimacy of your power that the position grants to you, but that sincerity of the influence you have over them. And that is why you see many things have been achieved positively. It's just a lack of, I don't want to use bad examples, but hey, tell me why someone like Adolf Hitler would convince a group of men, soldiers, to perpetrate a war for 7, 8 years and do whatever he says. He didn't leverage so much on the positional power. Of course, that gave him a lot of leverage, but
mm,
he blended both type of powers and sources of
Wanted,
power.
yeah.
mm,
Martin Luther King Jr. commanded a lot of respect. He didn't have any position, but he had power. He had influence on people. Why? He leveraged on the second source of power. In
mm,
Africa today, in many countries in Africa, I do not need to be specific, but we all know we can see examples everywhere. The leaders believe that all they need is power, and however they get it, that's fine. The
mm,
bandwagon, they get the legitimate power by virtue of the position, however they get it, and because they know that they've gotten a wrong source of power, they want to perpetrate themselves there because they know once they leave that position, the power is gone because of the
mm,
source they got the power from. So, yeah, I've talked a lot. I hope I'm not deviated, but I just wanted to spice it up to create more avenues, talking points for us. In summary, in in summary, what we need to do is that we need to understand that 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4. We cannot stop 4, but if we want to stop 4, we have to go to the source. Work
mm,
on 2 and work on 2. We may want to make 2 1 and make 1
True that.
2, and the outcome will be affected. But when you think people will not revolt, however it is, it means you are displaying your ignorance of history, and that will catch up on you and put you on the wrong side of history. All right, I'll stop
mm,
here, majorly
mm.
because I'm having some distractions, but I'm definitely with you all in this topic. Yeah, okay. Valerie.
Thank Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, Sarah, I've been just taking little notes as you were talking because what you have said is I just had little light bulbs going off in my head, relating to what it is that we're going through and really giving me an understanding of power and leadership and how we end up in the spaces where they're not accountable. And when you talk about legitimate power and reference power, what came to mind, because now in Kenya at the moment, we've got a huge amount of people unhappy with our president and who would like him to step out of office. But I go back to 2 years ago when we had a huge amount of people who were lobbying for him to come into office because of, ethics or whatever they were saying about him. They wanted him to come into office. And I'm looking at something that is transformational, in that how I interpret the situation for myself is when the political office was being taken up at that time, during elections, during the build up, when they're lobbying, they build on a lot of reference power and a touch of legitimate power. And for me, what it seems like is when that presidency came in, reference power went out the window. Now it became legitimate power. And legitimate power comes with different things. It comes with the use of money to retain power. It comes with security. You can no longer just wake up and walk freely, Because one of the things that Dr. Cyrus said is when you've got reference power, you don't really need things like security as much because people like you. So you don't have to protect yourself when you're walking around because nobody's out to harm you if they like you. They buy into having that direct relationship with you. And that helps you retain the power. But now look at an African president. Even I think going to the bathroom, to be crude, I'm sure there's security there as well, just in case, something happens. But if they go to a public place, you will see, oh my gosh, the entourage, 20 cars. policemen at the front, at the back, policemen hanging off the doors. There's ambulance. So it's like the person, and he might just be going for a meeting, but in order to step out of that protective cocoon of the state houses and the state offices, he cannot, because there is no relationship power when it comes to that. So we're only looking at legitimate power at that point. And this also ties in when one of the notes I put down came to influence, because one of the things that I'm discovering in the situation we're going through now in Kenya, relationships and influence are powerfully interconnected, based on what you said. I can be influenced by somebody who I look to up to and trust, somebody who I know, somebody who knows somebody that I know, you know. I'm able to put these aspects together. And when I hear something, I can then make a decision based on it. But the moment trust leaves and the moment I don't believe in what you're telling me, I feel like you said you would do something and you didn't, then there's no relationship. And that takes away influence. And Eno, before I even come to your opinion, I just want to add one thing that ties into what you said about power. So in politics, we know that there's definitely this violence and stuff. And as we've been having our journey here in Kenya, going through this political transition and revolution, one of the things that our president decided to do was to join the citizens on X space, listen to them, or he claimed he wanted to listen to the people, and from listening to the people, understand what the pain points were, and then be able to take action. And what happened in this space, and you know, for Africans, when it comes to our elders, there's no question. We just respect our elders, regardless of whether it's your drunk uncle in a gutter somewhere or whether it's, you know, whoever, they're all, we respect them. You know, they are sir, madam, whatever situation they're in. But here came our president into this space. And you could tell that influence was gone because the level of frustration that people spoke with, they were not being rude, but they were not being afraid to air their frustrations and to tell him, you have disappointed us here. You have not done this. And I thought if I was sitting with my dad, by the time I tell him, you have not done this, it would take a while. I think I'd write him a letter first with a warning, I'm coming, so that he knows. But then when influence goes, so does that level of sort of respect and relationship, and it's difficult to get back. And yeah, so I'll
That's
stop there and ask Eno, yeah, to share your comments based on what Osaro has just shared.
Yeah, while he was talking about influence, I still think it's high time people begin to think for themselves. Because this whole influence thing is something that has caused a lot of problems for us, even in our country here in Nigeria. Somehow, even when they do not have power, they probably have influence. Somehow they must play that. You see, this thing, I'm still hitting on it, this tribal card. There are some set of persons who are influential in the, tribal space, in the, they just come up and tell you stories. They just cook up one story and tell you why you guard what you have jealously against the other tribe, because they're coming to take what you want, and it's caused a lot of problem. I think just like when we discussed about the religious, I think we talked about religion, talked about how people of influence in the religious space are causing havoc. And we, at the end of the day, we concluded with telling people to think for themselves. I think that is the long and short of what we, right? To think for
Mm,
themselves, for them to be accountable for their own actions. We've gone past the time where we are going to be tossed to and fro by what this set of persons are saying, what this party is saying, what this godfather is saying, and do what is right at this point. Now, in Nigeria, we are going to be experiencing something from the 1st of August. That is the demands has been placed on the government by the youths. They want this, they want this, they want this, they want that. And they are going to be doing this in a very peaceful protest, which is their constitutional right as citizens of the country. And I'm sure this is obtainable in other climes of Africa and even the world, where people are constitutionally, allowed to do their protest peacefully. And then you would have people in power coming up to tell you, there's this, I think I saw a post on social media where they say the president wants the youths to desist from protest. Why would they warn? The word that is used is warning the youths to desist from protest. And they are, setting up, mechanisms to frustrate a protest without looking at their demands, without giving them a forum to air their views, whatever they are thinking, pour out their grievances. And then you come up with a pathway to, achieve whatever things they want. You have been placed there by the people and you are accountable to them. You are answerable to them. No person is above the law. In any part of the world, it is so. No one is above the law. So they should be allowed to protest. They should be allowed to, them to get to this point where they want to protest. It means that they've had it up to here. It means that they are frustrated. You need to see the list of demands that has been made. So yeah, looking back at it, our government, the people in power, are they accountable when it comes to political violence? Are they accountable? Are there structures to be put in place to checkmate their activities? Do we have a judiciary system that is checking the activities of all these political or people in power? Because when you come out to tell people do not protest and you try to sabotage their protest, I'm hearing stories like they even went as far as wanting to make rain fall or to protest just to frustrate them. They are doing some geology things and to disperse, not to come together. We've had cases in some Western states where they want to have some of these festivals to deter people from coming out and coming together, all those things. Now, if it gets to the point, I've heard of in Kenya where people are being picked up on the streets or picked up from their homes, or people are just disappearing because they are out to protest peacefully. The question still is, what are the systems put in place to check excessive use of power, political violence? What are these systems put in place? Are our judiciary systems in Africa, are they strong enough to handle cases like this? In Nigeria, we see a lot of corruption, especially in the judiciary system. Have placed. They want autonomy of the judiciary system. They do not want people from the political class to control whatever goes on in the judiciary. Appointments and all that. Even in the electoral side, they do not want those ones in power to be, responsible. They want this body, the judiciary, electoral bodies, to be to work on their own. Okay, so this is the major problem. Will corruption allow us to see the light of day when it comes to this situation leading to political violence? We are looking at comments. We want to get contributions from people. We'll be reading comments shortly. What is the political atmosphere in your country, in your region? What is it like at this moment? We want to know. I think there's a revolution now. A lot of protests are going on, and Nigeria is about to key into that. We want to see what the government is going to come up with.
Gosh, Eno, thank you. What you brought to mind is, and what made me ask myself a question is, where can we learn from? And I'm going to share something based on the news that I've read and my interpretation of the news. And even as I share it, I'll share a disclaimer. I don't know the facts. I don't have all the information. So what I'm sharing is purely opinion based, and opinion can change depending on what information is available to me. And I share that because I want to talk about what happened recently in America with the attempt on the life of presidential candidate Donald Trump. And not so much even the attempt on his life and what happened around that, whether it was a political stunt or not, but what happened afterwards? When we talk about who is responsible, how do they take responsibility? What does taking responsibility look like? And I think here I'll also need some insight from Dr. Osaro, who is in the States and might have some more information. Because the news that we received is that somebody who was bearing that I'll say burden of responsibility from the Secret Service resigned from his position when he was unable to explain why what happened happened. You know, so as a way of being responsible and being accountable in that space, what happened was the resignation. And Osaro, you'll just let us know if I'm right there or not. But so that's sort of the information that we have. And in Africa, you know,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely correct. It's all over the news. So, of course, that shows accountability, but there's no extent to which politicians can go and politics can turn. But I would
Mm,
like to think that nobody wants to play a stunt with their life.
mm,
So I mean, the first thing that came to my mind then was when I heard the news, when it just happened, because it happened in a state close to where I stay, very close. I was, wow. I was like, is this a political stunt or what? But when I
mm,
looked closer, when things became more apparent, I didn't want to believe this is a political stunt.
mm,
However, you know what? I think coming to the US, this is more like a fight between different ideologies. I wouldn't want to look at it as political ideologies,
mm,
because the political ideologies have always been there, the Democrats and
mm,
the Republicans. I would like to look at it as the way forward for the world. The world has two paths to take right now and in the near future, and this is a fight between the path the world should take. That is my
mm,
own subjective opinion. And this has to do with a lot of things, a lot of very sensitive things that people hold dear to heart. And I have been to churches where they don't hold back on their choice for candidates. I've seen that in two churches. So they don't hold back. And that is because perhaps the choice are the leaders of these churches, and they all know that there's a choice to be made, left or right. That will signal how the world will go later on. And it's so clear. So this is this is what is happening now on ground. And it's not so much of political ideologies anymore that we usually will know and
mm,
work with. And it is almost sadly, I mean, quite correctly, you've got an enlightened population that they can make a choice, and their choice will be held sacrosanct.
mm,
But back home in Africa, you may make a choice, and the choice do not reflect in the outcome. Not
so
because we're practicing democracy, but because, I mean, it's sad to note this and even say it. It's just because we we copy things in a very brutal way, so to speak. And it's all, I mean, the examples are just all over there.
mm,
I can't wait for us to start talking about the solutions and see how clueless we may be because
you know,
how
I was
how are we going to solve this?
That's the thing. I mean, here we have in Kenya, we have young people who woke up and said, enough is enough is enough. It's enough. We are done. And they were like, the only way we can solve this is as people, let us go and say we don't want it. We are saying no and we are done. And that was the end of our finance bill. And I think of myself as a young person. I realized I fit in my little millennial box whereby our way of protesting is different. We won't go to work or something like that, you know. But to yell and have our voices heard is, you know, not one way. And young people are looking for solutions that work for them because they have seen, like, we are their older brothers and sisters, as an example. And they've seen us go through university, get into the workspace, work so hard, and have, you know, by the time we're buying our home, by the time you're buying a car, an
You're
average job, you know, you know how hard you have worked to get that first car and how much you love it. And, you know, because it was not an easy something. Not that it should be easy, but this is now just one small asset. And we're building up families, but we're not empowered enough to be able to do that. And these young people are looking at this situation and saying, I want to be empowered, and I want to know, if I study for 4 years in college, I will go out and I'll get a job, you know, and it'll be a job that will pay me well, not just pay me enough for my transport to and from work. Or so I take it because there's no other option, you know. So, what do we do from now? And it's an interesting question, Asara, because I ask myself, I am not on the street actively with my people, for, you know, my own sort of personal reasons. One of them being people are getting killed out there. And as a single parent, I have to consider that before I go out on the street where there's a possibility of genuinely being shot, when I'm out there. So I do my support in the background where I can. But looking at the broader situation, what young people are asking for when it comes to accountability, when it comes to opportunities, when it comes to being able to work in their own country because they're qualified, rather than being shipped off to other countries to do jobs that are way below their qualifications, you know. What can I do as an individual and as a person? And one of the things that I think I can do in the space that I'm in is actually genuinely support young people in this country. And why do I say genuinely? I had to learn, sit back and actually give myself, you know, when you have a conversation with yourself, teach yourself, what are my barriers when it comes to thinking about young people? Because before this revolution, we had opinions of how young people don't want to work. They just come to the office and play on Instagram. There were all these things that we're thinking through. And looking at them now, I'm like, no, these are the people who are teaching us how to do it better, teaching us that we can stand up, that we can demand for that right. So where do we start from? I think we start from an individual basis. If enough individuals start doing things, then it will have a ripple effect. So as an individual, hire young people in the company, hire them, teach them what you can, learn from them as much as you're teaching them, you know, so that you're able to put into actually the narrative of meeting what it is that they need. Be transparent. How many of us don't understand things because we're not told all the details? So, as an example, you work for a large company, maybe they make $1 million a year. You know that of that million, you brought in 100,000, but you're being paid 5,000, and you're like, why aren't they paying me more? You know, I brought in so much money, they're only giving me this much. They're so mean. But in reality, the question that we're not asking is, what are their expenses? What is it that's holding them back? They are not being transparent in, this is the barrier. But if we overcome this barrier, this is the opportunity that is available, you know, how that conversation can change a workplace. So there's room for transparency, understanding. And I think that's one way, like as a human being, as a business person, looking at the difference I can make in the next 1 year, that's where I would begin. Mm. And Eno, what about you? And yes, Osaro?
yeah, that's correct. And you know what? I would like to fall back, to using examples that you used. Um,
Mm.
I remember in the last Kenyan elections that gave birth to the current president, Is it the president or the prime minister? How is it?
The gosh, we had a prime minister for some time. Then now we don't anymore.
All
But
right.
our president will be our deputy president.
Yeah, but I know he was heralded during the. It was someone that a lot of people wanted, and
Mm,
I do know also that the Kenyan election was well praised by a large percentage of the Nigerian population for being, what it is supposed to be. And then you find out that a generality of the population have decided to choose someone that they believe will chart the course in a good direction that they want. But midway into it, it looks like they're changing their minds. And some of the Kenyan population are actually, you know, asking him to step down. I'm not so sure if it is because of the way he handled the whole situation or they feel he's not competent enough. Either case, this is a case of they wanted something, they got what they ordered, right? And then after they tasted it, this is not what they like.
the salt was too much.
Then let's come to
Too much.
Nigeria. Yeah, it is a case. It is a case of it's mixed feelings. Some people will say, "Hey, this is who we wanted." Other
Mm,
people will say, "This is not what we wanted. The elections were flawed," and so whatever the case may be, whoever it is there, some people will definitely want to use this opportunity to show their displeasure of what happens at the polls. Some are genuine, of course, many are not genuine, but it doesn't change the fact that things are going wrong. And
mm,
it beats my heart to know that we still have situation of leaders who want to lead as emperors, even with a democratic yardstick. Okay, ignore me. Now, the thing is this: many of these problems are simple. Just talk to the people. Talk to the people. Now you have governments, and I'm going to use different example. Okay, Nigerian example. You have people who are angry, and this is spontaneous. I want to believe the government has very good intentions for the people. Of course, if you've got it, you've got it. If you don't have it, no matter the intention, it's of no consequence. But they have good intentions. They are not translating it to the people. You're not communicating. Now, we all know that one of the fastest ways for lies to perpetrate, for gossip and grapevine to perpetrate, is when you don't communicate as a leader. If you run an organization where there's not open communication, you're going to have a lot of gossips. And people are not well enlightened enough to sieve gossip from the truth or know the ways to handle it. Now, when you have a country where you have leaders who are not talking to the people or feel they are not supposed to talk to the people because they're emperors, so to speak, you're going to have people asking questions. And then you're going to have questions being answered by a lot of people. Now, when people are hungry, when people don't hear from the leaders, their so called fathers, they are bound to feel things are going wrong and react. Now, the problem is that when they react, they may not follow the Newton's law. Okay? Which states, I mean, third law, which states for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. No, the reaction may not be
Reaction,
equal.
yeah.
That's the problem because you've got a lot of people thinking, and because you're not talking to them, you need to communicate. And most times, people don't want to hear from aides. They believe that when they hear directly from the leader, it shows that he's got their concern at heart. But that's not what many African leaders do. And I don't know why. Why don't you talk to the people? It has been proven time and again. Look at history. When the leader dialogues and talk with the people listen. He's got that power. They listen and they feel, okay, let's give him some time. He's talked to us, he has laid his plan for us, and all he needs is some time. We can persevere. It's just like a father telling a child, hey, I've got good plans for you. Give me some time. The child will listen. But when you have a leader who is not talking to the people, you leave the people with no choice than to listen to others And trust me, most of what they will listen to are things that will fuel their thoughts negatively. And the outcome, it's just there. It's obvious. You know what it will be even before it happens. Your only solution is to warn protesters. Do not protest. If you protest, we'll do this. We'll get the army there. That is, it's laughable. It's very laughable because you have no knowledge of history, you have no charisma to deliver leadership, and most of all, you sound and look clueless. And it's painful because many of these people actually have good intentions. So I think, well, let me stop here. You were asking Eno. So perhaps Eno will give us more current realities in Nigeria, which seems to be, I mean, I look at the news, First Post, We On, the major news. I don't know if they're trying to fuel the protest, but they're all talking about the protest. And I'm even wondering, are you sure this protest will happen? I mean, the last protest, massive that happened, we know how it ended. But the truth is, a hungry man is an angry man.
Yeah.
Should I shock you?
Yeah,
There,
that is it.
should I shock you? I mean, do you know that currently there's been an increase in the minimum wage? A massive increase in the minimum wage in Nigeria, which is a good thing, right? Valerie, guess what?
Yes.
It's a good thing. But should I also shock you?
Yes.
It is about $42. Yeah, don't worry, you can laugh. I've laughed at myself even before saying
Oh
this.
God.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my gosh.
people,
Okay.
people, people can choose to die by bullet or die by hunger. The choice is entirely
Mm,
up to them. But you can stop this,
And
and
we
this
are
is
talking about monthly.
yeah, monthly. That's not daily. It's monthly, and
mm,
this goes out there through all the leaders, wherever you
in,
are,
in,
whoever you
in
are,
view of the
sitting in your office, you can get better results with good communication, effective communication. Talk to the people, they will listen. They've got no choice. If they listen to you, you have a better opportunity to get to implement what you want to do. But it starts first with talking with the people. Talk with the people directly. It has proven a number of ways to deliver leadership at a platform that offers better outcomes.
mm.
All right. Yeah, so that's just a bit. I've got a lot. If you leave me right now, I'll keep talking. So I'll stop here.
so there are so many things, yeah, so many things to talk about. We are looking at political violence, but the question we should ask: what is fueling political violence? There are so many things that are ills in Africa today that is causing us to have political violence. That is causing the masses to be unhappy. For instance, we'll talk about our leaders who has seen that seat of power as their birthright. I was discussing over that with Valerie. See one coming as a president and he doesn't want to leave. We have that case, Museveni. He's been there for ages. I think that's Uganda, right? For decades and decades, non-end. We had other countries where when the president leaves, he hands over power to his son or to his brother's in-law, whatever it is. They just want to, maintain that. No, these things are happening in Africa and they are going unchecked. This is one of the issues we are having that is causing people to be dissatisfied and people to want to protest in Africa or in other parts of the West where they know what they are doing. We have Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. I think he was in his late 30s or 40s, if I'm not mistaken. We have people who are thinking digitally. Now, the African leaders, we have them staying there for as old as maybe 70 something, 80 years. And the way they are thinking is the way it has been in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s. They are not bringing anything new. They want to treat us as if we are their children. They give us orders and we cannot obey. Pardon me for that. I'm trying to see if I can alternate my network. Please bear with me. Please pardon me for that. So we are having people who are thinking analog. I don't know the way to define it, but in an analog way, we have them in their 80s, in their 70s, and they are thinking like we are children. They give us whatever they dish out, and we don't have to complain about it. But in places where there is advancement and development, we have people who are coming up with good ideas, innovative solutions to the problems they are having at hand. So this is one of the major issues we're having in Africa. Another thing, again, we look at what happened in US recently when there was an assassination attempt on the former president. There was displeasure, there was dissatisfaction, a lot of talk here and there, and that made the head of the security, the security chief, to step down because they are accountable. There are questions that were raised. What happened under your watch? So something went wrong, or so something went wrong. And when she couldn't answer these questions, she saw that they see her as incompetent. She had to step down. So this is one thing that African leaders should understand. When you know you are not fit to do a job, please step down for people who can do the job. It is okay to resign when you are not giving people what they bargained for. You know, this election thing, what I ordered versus what I got. People have the right to complain. People have the right to protest. When you come up with ideals, you come up with things that do not fit what you had campaigned for earlier. Because when they want to come in, they come with lots of promises during their campaign. They tell you they don't get things done. People get dissatisfied. And this is where the protest comes. If we do not address these issues first, we'll continue to see unrest in our countries in Africa. We need to set up a mechanism or systems that can keep our leaders in check, that can make them accountable. Until we arrive at that point, we are not going to have a headway. We are never going to be developed as a continent. So this is where I'm going to. We need to check. We need to set up systems that will hold these people accountable. Our electoral system are free to run on their own without any interference of those in governance or political parties or political power, whoever that may be in any part of Africa. So this is where we are at. We will continue to experience unrest until we deal with these issues that are causing the unrest.
Wow, thank you, Eno. You know, you're talking, I'm like, yes, ticking all the boxes. And in terms of what it is that we need to do. And I'm so glad, as I've listened to both you and Osaro on what we need to do. Osaro, you mentioned that when people are hungry, that's it. You know, that's where the base of the problem starts. If people are not, they don't have time to be thinking about protesting. They're now dealing with life on a different angle. Sorting out the most basic problem is the easiest response to unrest. Listening to people, communication is the easiest problem. Accountability, when you can't do something, then just don't, say that you cannot and step down. I'll always look at things also from a corporate perspective, where when you hire something, when they don't deliver, you don't just stay with them because you're feeling sorry for them or they made a promise to you 6 years ago. Your business needs to move, so you move them so that then you get in somebody who is able to further the agenda or what it is that you want to achieve. And our leaders need to look at it that way. And I feel really enlightened. Especially, I'll just come back, Osara, and say when I think about hunger, I'm like, yes, it's a problem. It's a problem. How do you sort out that? Don't touch. I think even when we talk about holding politicians accountable for their decisions, let's even look at the decisions they're making. Don't pinch where it hurts. If we're growing nations, all of us in Africa, food is fundamental. Don't pinch that. Housing, where we need to have a roof over our heads, don't pinch that. Find other places that you can, grow, attack when you're looking for ways to draw Like in Kenya, it's taxation. How do we draw money from people? How do we then grow them? Where it is something fundamental, grow that space, but find a way to do it that people see, yes, that this is actually worthwhile for me. The government cares, without punishing others. If it means we need cheaper food, if it means we need more affordable manufacturing systems in that sector, prioritize that, just yes, what and also from this, being a leader requires knowledge, and knowledge of what's happening for real, on the ground with the people, not the people who are working for you and want to make sure that you're happy and are yes people and only tell you what they think you should hear, but the genuine things that are happening. And I think leaders then also need a level of humility. I think my closing words before I come to the two of you is how I would love then to see an Africa that we described earlier, where a leader does not need security, an Africa where if our president wanted to wake up and walk down the street, buy something from the supermarket and go back to his office, he can do that without fear of, I know some people don't like me, but not enough to come and want to finish me off, but he can actually do that, that he has the freedom in that level and, space of power to make decisions where he can walk, even if he's walking with two or three security, but he can, where he can shake somebody's hand, where he can invite that an average Kenyan who's spoken to him to dinner so that they can talk about what this person's problem is. Have a one-on-one the way you would have with a family member. The sort of Africa where we have relationship with our leaders, and our leaders really are at service for the people, genuinely, not for themselves, but really servicing the people, and they find their satisfaction in the people's needs being met. That's the Africa that I hope we can get to. And, we now can look at it and see how do we make that happen, and one of the ways is discussions like this. So I will close there and, allow you to, if you have any closing words, just to share what we'd like to leave people thinking through today. Eno, Osaro.
All right. So my closing remark. All right. All right. All right. I got you, Valerie. Closing remarks from me, just like I just said, is we need to work on the system. Whatever is causing this unrest, we need to address it. It's not just okay for us to say, okay, because they are doing this, we want to come out and protest. We need to address, it's good sometimes, like Valerie said, you just examine yourself, you talk to yourself, you tell yourself the truth. Look at your system. Why is our own system not working? Why do we other clients? Why are our investors leaving the shores of Africa? These are questions we should sit down and ask ourselves. We are having security problems. For instance, we've been having the issue of herdsmen of Boko Haram or whatever that we have in the northeastern parts of Nigeria. And it has been on for a very, very long time. I want to believe that if it had been in the military regime, that would not have seen the light of another day, because it would have seen immediate action. Because what the military understand is they address things as they come. So that makes one think that there's a political undertone, people that it benefits. For instance, electricity that we are having interrupted here in Nigeria. What is okay for now? We are going to be having a protest, right? And since this has been in the pipeline, we've been having relatively constant electricity. So it means these people know what to do. They actually know what to do, but they are failing to do it. So we need to ask ourselves questions. Why are we like this? Why do we continue to entertain this kind of, I don't know how to describe it. They are about to protest. In a bid to stop them from protesting, you are giving them whatever they need quickly on the surface. Like Dr. Osaro said, there is an increase in the minimum wage, whether it has gotten to about $42 or whatever we call it. They've started attending to the demands of these people. To their demands, if you can give them electricity, what has stopped you from doing that in the past that had provoked this protest? So we need to address these issues. We need to tell ourselves the truth. There is serious decay in the system. What part have you played in that decay? And what are you willing to sacrifice to make sure that there is a headway? So for those of you who are going to be protesting and those of you who are already protesting in other places like in Kenya, please be safe. That's my word for you. Please be safe and make sure that no one stifles your voice. Speak out. It's your constitutional right. Thank you.
That's correct. Yeah, that's, I mean, you've us loaded with wisdom. Great. Um, it's my concluding remarks is that the best way to avoid something is to do the things that avoid it. It is always said that
True
proactivity
that.
is a lot better than reactivity. And the common parlance there is prevention is better than cure. Spend more of your time trying to do things that will prevent an outcome than trying to mitigate the outcome. You have enough time to key in your ideas, your vision to the people. Where there is a vision, people know a direction. And where there's a direction, people will stand to see your objectives. But if there's no vision, people are left but to think of other things to do. You still got the time. And this is going out there to the leaders. You still got the time. Enough of it to prevent whatever protests that want to happen or whatever actions that people are planning in order to vent their grievances, which is their fundamental right. The problem is that we cannot dictate how it will go and end. And when people talk about do not protest because of we don't know how it will end, that is just chickening out. People still need to voice their concerns. And the best way for it to go well is
Yeah,
to hear from the
I
leaders.
agree.
Talk to the people. Talk to the people. You need to talk to the people. Now, because of a very large vacuum, distance between the leaders and the followers, especially in some of these countries we see in Africa, that is why there's a protest. I'll tell you something psychologically, where you have, let me use a couple or two friends, where you have two friends shouting at each other. One of the probable reasons for that is that there is already a vacuum between them. That's why they have to shout. The physical distance is not there, but there's an emotional distance. And they're shouting, replicating the emotional distance and putting it into the condition of a physical distance. The reason they're shouting is because they're no more close. But when they become close, you see them talking peacefully, sometimes in whispers. When the people protest, they are replicating the scenario. They are no more close to the leaders. There's a vacuum, and so they're shouting and they're trying to cause distraction just so that they can be heard and talked to. That's just the thing. They just want to be heard. Almost everybody knows it's not magic. It doesn't happen in 1 minute or even 1 month or 1 year to turn around the economy. But of course, there should be a start. The people protest because they want to fill this void, this vacuum between leadership and followers. Guess what? Whoever you are as a leader, and this is coming from someone who has done a lot of talk on leadership, it is a simple, very simple solution, and that is talk to the people with all sincerity, with all purpose, and with all intention. And you do not need to put the police or the soldiers on the streets. They will listen to you, they will be patient with you, they want to hear you give them a timeline, and they'll follow it through. And if they find you wanting, they will raise your voice again, and then you talk with them again. If you decide to make this a constant thing, there will be no need for protest. And when I talk about communication, I want them not to get me wrong. I'm talking about verbal communication, not non-verbal communication, and expect people to understand what so-called body language calling or whatever. I don't know. So verbal communication is key. Thank you very much, Valerie, and Eno. It's been, a pleasure as always being on this show again, and I hope we can make it happen not too far from now again. All right. So to our teaming viewers, it's been a pleasure sharing this space with you. Thank you for following us and supporting us. We count on more support from you going forward. Bye, everybody.
Yes, bye. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Bye.